recording this, and we'll be putting these up on our YouTube channel for those who couldn't participate during this time, because they want to know the answers to the questions that we're asking. Does anybody need paperwork? Anybody not get those? Rod's here to assist, to get you all the details. He's our TA today. Or is it PA or TA? What do you call it? Professor's assistant or teacher's assistant? Yeah. This is what you do when you're retired. You look for whatever you can do to get the job done. Yes. Good. All right. With that, I'm just going to turn it over to Michael.
Hello once again. I hope everybody got some coffee and some food. Everybody get coffee or food? Everybody good? Okay. All right, coffee to keep you awake. All right. And the more you talk, the less I'll talk, so I encourage questions. One of the things I'm going to do are the two ladies that went down. I see one. Monica and Rhonda, correct? All right. Oh, there you are. Okay. Couldn't find you. So I'm going to have them share a little bit about what they observed in the community and just their take on things, because I'm here representing Food for the Hungry. Please understand, I'm not here to sell anything. It's not about selling you on something. As I've been at Food for the Hungry for about 8.5 years. I do have a pastoral background. I've been involved in nonprofit work virtually my whole adult life. But I'm not here to sell you on anything. As I do, and a lot of my time at FH, I worked with private donors and donors that were higher capacity in giving, that partner with us to do the work around the world that we do. And even with them, we don't strong arm people. It's about sharing opportunity for people who have like minds about the issue and allowing God, because we are a faith-based, Christ-centered organization. We have 5 values. The first value is we follow Jesus. So right out of the gate, we make it clear who we are, who we serve, who we follow, and we go as the hands and feet of Jesus reaching out to the oppressed. So we make that very clear up front. And so we follow him. And the beauty of that is most people that contribute to our organization are Christ followers. Now, we have some that are not, but most of them are Christ followers. And the individuals I'd work with, and obviously in every church I work with, then I present opportunities and I allow God, not allow God, I allow you to hear from God is what I mean to say. Because just as he speaks to me, he can speak to each of us, right? And direct our steps. So we present opportunities and allow God to speak to people. And sometimes it resonates and they believe they need to. Sometimes they choose not to. Same with churches. But we are grateful that you folks are in that process of trying to decide, is this for us? And we welcome that process. It's a process. And we respect it and welcome it. But again, I'm not here to strong arm anybody. But my whole point of all that long speech was simply to say, hearing what some of your own folks have experienced can go a lot further than even all the jumble of words that I may say. So I want you to hear from them what their perspective was, what their heart said, what they saw, observed, and then we'll come back, and there are several questions I will just tell you up front I want to look at. One is to give you a brief summary of an update. You have some good information here on this one sheet. It tells you things that have been accomplished and several needs there at the bottom that they're really focused on as a community. We're going to talk about safety concerns, which I know was a question that had been asked. Is it safe to go to Nicaragua? And 3 is, what does it take to have a successful partnership? What's that look like? And what are some of the first steps we need to take? So those are some of the questions I'm already scheduled to look at. But ladies, you want to come up together or individually?
was going in with, I would say I'm pretty skeptical about situations where you're looking to partner with a big organization. I got to go because thankfully Chris had let his passport expire. And so he asked me if I could go, and of course, passport at the ready. I said yes. And so Rhonda and I really did have a wonderful trip. We found out we're very compatible travelers, so that was good. But one of the things that I would tend to look for are, is the organization staying on mission? And their mission is so very clear. And Michael talked earlier about the broken relationships. And everything that they do within the communities feeds from, it stems from that mission. And it's very practical, and there are measurable outcomes, which I know everybody talks about a lot in nonprofits, so that you can, prove that you actually are doing what you say you're doing. And they do a very good job of that. But I think the thing that really stood out to me the most is the focus on an asset-based work rather than a deficit-based work. Because usually when you go into a community, you think about a lot of the things that they don't have. Whereas FH goes in using local folks who live there and know the community and know the people, and they say, what are the assets that you have and how can we build on that and build your confidence? And it's a really incredible thing. We actually were in the region where we will be going if we decide to do this partnership. We were in a neighborhood very close to it, Bijar Norte, not Sur. And we had the chance to talk with community leaders and see how they do the planning and how we get involved. And I think for our church, one of the things that we've talked about as we've made the presentations to the different groups was there has been a habit, I think, with a lot of missions teams about, well, what can we go do for them? No, that's not the approach here. The approach is, what are their needs that they have identified, and how can we help them reach those goals? And so this is not about us deciding what they need. It's them telling us what they need and what their goals are for their community, and us going and helping meet those goals. So now Rhonda will say something.
How do you follow that?
Covered it all. For me, I've been to Haiti a number of times, and some of you have, and it was such a different ministry I think we were working with. The vision for actually allowing the communities to take the lead, and their leaders actually are sort of elected in these communities, men and women who are respected, and lots of women leaders. But they're very respected, and they work together. Just the unity of how the people themselves work together, and you're going to hear about savings groups, and it is truly amazing how all of this works and how the relationship they were restoring with one another is so evident. And the staff on the ground, I think that was another critical thing. In Haiti, we didn't have the staff on the ground. We would leave and come back. But now, through this ministry, Food for the Hungry staff, they're on the ground daily. They get on those mopeds and they go into these communities and really walk alongside those who live in the communities. And these are Nicaraguans who live there. They know the culture, and that's who they are. So
I think that maybe later we can talk more about some of the practical pieces of it, about like what would it be like to get there, and this, he mentioned the security concerns. I would just say we were very, very well cared for. It was a very tightly controlled environment with incredible planning. I never felt unsafe, and the team that was with us was just fantastic. And so I wouldn't certainly say there aren't issues, and they're very good about paying attention to the situation locally and determining if that is still a safe environment. So, and we can answer other questions later if that would help.
Thank you, ladies. You two can travel with me to the next church I'm in and just share it. That would be great. Now, they did a great job. And we are about we ask ourselves all the time, we continue to lean into this. Are we keeping our promises? And that, first and foremost, is to the people we serve, but also to our partners, like a church or individual donors. Are we keeping our promises are we doing what we say we're going to do? And we are concerned about the outcomes, not so that we can say, look what we did, but because we are committed to keeping our promises to the people we serve. right, and making a difference. So those things are important to us, and thank you for hitting on all that. And ladies, that was great. Really appreciate that. I want to give a brief update, and this first sheet really tells you some of the progress that has already happened. But I wanted to kind of talk about the process of FH in a community. We do not partner a church with a community as soon as we get to a community, because they're not ready for that yet. The community is not ready for it. And we want to bring them along in the process to become not just recipients of, but owners of. Like you're kind of alluding to that. We raise up leadership in the communities, right? And they are empowered and trained to do the work that we begin. And so right from the get-go, it's not about providing a hand out, but a hand up. Big difference in the approach. Hand out, you just keep doling it out, right? And so if we do that in the beginning, we bring a church in the beginning, a partner in, then their mindset is, oh, it started when this church came. They're helping us do the work as we go. And if something happens in 6 years with the well pump or whatever else, then the church is going to handle it. Our approach is we begin to create an idea of ownership from the beginning, leadership in the beginning, empowerment in the beginning, train them so that they become the leaders of it. We walk alongside of them in that process. And when it breaks down, they say, okay, we've been trained, we can equip, we know how to fix it. We know how to do it. This is our responsibility, right? Huge difference in approach. But it makes a world of difference, because when we enter a community, we enter with an exit strategy in place. All right? We don't want to be a perpetual, our goal is not to be a perpetual handout. It is to lift people up out of a place of poverty, equip them to be self-sustaining, so that one day they're going to, in most cases, come to us and say, we're ready to stand on our own. We want you to go. Now, 2 years into the process, they wouldn't say that, nor would they be ready for it. But their mindset wouldn't allow them to say it, because they may still be focused inwardly, just looking at themselves, because they haven't fully grasped some of those broken relationships. And it's all about, people, it's all about me, myself, and I. I want to make sure I get all I have and I need for myself and my family. And even in our communities, it's kind of like that when we first begin. But slowly you see them changing and pivot to where it's not just about meeting their own need, it's meeting the needs in the community. And they become selfless rather than selfish, right? And so their hearts and minds begin to pivot and turn in that approach as we work with them. Don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how the approach is. So at a certain point in time, often it's like year 3 or 4, they'll then be ready for a church to partner with the church. For this particular community, that period happened right when this event happened that maybe you've heard about, COVID. I don't know if any of you heard about it, but it impacted them. Now, the disease or illness itself wasn't the problem. It was all the other stuff that went along with COVID, right? And you know how it wrecked our economy, how it wrecked small businesses even in this community. You can only imagine how it wrecks an economy in a third world country. And so there was a lot of fallout from that. We certainly did not want to go into a community and infect anyone with COVID, first of all, because they don't have access to health care like we do. But beyond that, economically, there was that ripple impact throughout the whole world. And it really did do a number. Even to the point that after COVID had come and gone for us, we were still having issues even finding contractors that were then solvent enough to do the work that needed done, like digging a well or building a building, that kind of thing, in those communities. And it paused. We had to pause for a while because it had impacted their economy to the point a lot of the businesses were not solvent enough for us to invest thousands of dollars in for a project because we didn't have confidence that it would come to fruition. And so COVID had a massive impact, not only during it, but after it, and for a period of time. We're now back to the point where we're seeing some progress. But COVID did set back poverty, as I mentioned earlier, for a period of years. I mean, it had a devastating impact. But now they're ready for that partnership. And here's your opportunity to do that. And we're grateful for this long list of projects that have been accomplished. I'm not going to go down and read the whole list, but what I will say, as you look through that list, there are accomplishments that impact spiritually, that impact physically, that impact relationally and emotionally as we deal with individuals in the community. I did want to mention, and you can see where we partner with churches, we train church leaders. We also partner with them maybe for a roof project or something in their church if there's a serious need. But also under the training, the very first check mark, Renovare, I wanted to mention that module is about spiritual formation. So, I have a document, it's actually also available on our website, but I can make it available to some of your missions team. It's called God's Story, and it's the biblical foundation for our whole approach that I shared briefly about this morning, some about the relationships and our foundational approach in Scripture. So I can make that available for you guys too. It is on the website, but maybe hard to find, so we'll make sure you have that. But you can see whether it's providing Bibles, offering leadership principles for some of the pastors, spiritual formation. Right out of the gate, we're training people, we're helping them come to a proper understanding of who God is, His love for them, and how it impacts their lives and brings them hope rather than being hopeless. So that in a nutshell, you'll see on here then how we've done that in these various projects. There are some needs that are listed at the very bottom, some things that would be of prime focus, such as installing an electric pump, construction of a well, and I was actually at that school and saw their need for a well. I was there in February for a week. Rehabilitation of water system benefiting 117 families. So you see, water is a recurring need. We do a lot of projects in the field that we work in as a nonprofit. There's an acronym called WASH, W-A-S-H, standing for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene. And it's projects that are done in those areas. In the last year, approximately year and a half, we did about $1.5 million worth of WASH projects throughout Nicaragua alone. And David Bradford, the country director, in a meeting just 2 weeks ago, he was sharing about that. And a lot of that happened through church partners, by the way. Those projects were funded a lot through church partners. And he was sharing about how, as they did this filtration project in one community who still did not have clean access to water, they told them that they had been seeking and asking for water, clean water, for 30 years. 30 years they've been knocking on the door with the government and others for a clean water project, and they finally got it. And don't you know that they're happy? But it makes a world of difference. Obviously, we need clean water for a lot of reasons, but it impacts you not only physically, it impacts you, you need water, but a source of water, but it impacts your health. It impacts education, because if they're not healthy and they have sickness, then it affects their schooling. And this may be a good time to talk about Carlos, who is he's a staff member for us in the Dominican Republic. He grew up as a sponsored child in one of our communities. And Carlos is on the team that I lead. And he's told me the story several different times of how he grew up as a child before we were in the community, having to fetch water before school every morning. An hour to get it, an hour to bring it back, heavy jugs, as a young child. And he said, by the time I got to school every morning, I was already beat for the day. I was exhausted. And it affected my schooling. And that had ripple effects then. But he went on to say, before we were there in the community, he said, I didn't realize that there could be something for me beyond what I only saw in the community. It was the mentality, this is who we are, this is what I am, and this is all we're ever going to be. And he didn't have hope. And he didn't see the possibility for dreams. Today, he has 2 college degrees and working on his master's, works full-time for us, and it is a delight. But we were traveling just within the last year, about 6-8 months ago, in the region of the Dominican Republic, right by Haiti, on the border zone, poorest area of the Dominican Republic. We were not in Punta Cana, we were in Punta up in the mountains, all right? So it was way up in the mountains, and kind of similar to here in some respects, as far as the terrain, and very, very poor people. And we were in a community that was almost ready for us to say goodbye, that they wanted to stand on their own. And we'd seen a lot of things done. Carlos had been there early on in the process when they first came to be with us. And as we're meeting with leadership, we're all around a big long table, and they were sharing reports about everything that was going on in the community. Carlos was in the middle, about halfway down this table. I was at the end taking a picture. Carlos came down, stood behind me, and after I took the picture, he called me over, and he whispered, he goes, Michael, I had to get up. I could not stay there seated because I knew I couldn't keep it together. He was about to lose it emotionally and start bawling. He said, I remember when we first came to this community, it was unsafe. The people were all self-focused. No one was caring about the next person on the street. As a matter of fact, there would be people on the street left for dead, like our story today, literally murdered overnight. Everybody was scared to go out because of gangs in the street, and to hear them begin to share one by one about the savings initiative that they led, the livelihoods initiative they were leading, and on and on. He goes, every single one of them were giving the praise, the glory, the honor to God about what God had accomplished in this community. He goes, I was overwhelmed, not because of all the work that we had done and all these water projects and everything else that had happened. I was overwhelmed by the spiritual transformation in the hearts of the people, and I couldn't keep it together. That is the power of going as the hands and feet of Jesus, doing things that you say, well, how is supporting a barbershop entrepreneurship spiritual? I guarantee you it is. It has a spiritual consequence. And it is amazing that as we go meeting these practical needs, humanitarian needs. I grew up in a church that was very conservative. By the way, I was born in West Virginia, so almost Virginia, but just west. And grew up there in Charleston, and I tell people my family crossed the Jordan River into the promised land of Ohio when I was in 7th grade, and in search of better opportunities, right? So that's what it was used to be, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and Route 21 going to Ohio. So now there's Interstate 77, but, anyway, God is doing some great things in those communities, and there is transformation that is happening. And I can't just tell you how much those projects, every single one of them, has a spiritual impact on their lives as they begin to understand God's love for them and who they are, who they've been created to be. It also impacts families. See, in many of those, including Nicaragua, in this community, it impacts, there are domestic issues. Because most of the men there are raised believing almost that they own their wife and their children. They're more like property than an equal human being of worth, dignity, and value. And so as we go into those communities, we have to change not only their perception of who God is and how he loves them, but who they are as a person of worth and dignity, but who their wife is, who their children are. Because there's violence in the homes at times, abusive or even physical in some cases. Saw it in Peru the week after I was in Nicaragua, same thing, where we've developed programs for the men to help them gain a better understanding of who they are, who God is, and who their wife and their children are. And it's transforming families in a really cool way. So all of these, whether you think it's a spiritual, well, when are we holding an evangelistic service? We're not there to start churches. We're there to empower the local church. But we do get involved in those churches. And most of the pastors are involved in leadership in the communities. It's a great thing. So I'm going to stop before I answer any other questions I have on my paper. Are there any questions you have? Yes. Here.
Yeah, just thank you so much for this.
Go to a mic so they can.
We can be recorded on the video for other people.
Mike,
You have 10 seconds for the question or they cut it off, but that's all right. Go.
okay. Thank you so much for this powerful presentation. Two questions. I'm assuming correctly but just wanted to make sure that you are working into their hearts the masterful presentation you gave us here about poverty and breaking poverty, the brokenness of the relationships with God and self and others and fatalism. That's probably part of the core curriculum, yes?
It would be part of the core of what it is the focus of what we do. Yeah.
And it just seemed to me that was freeing for me to hear that. It must be greatly freeing for them in the situation of poverty, in the grip of poverty. Evidences of that, yes?
Well, as I said, it literally is transformative. The story I mentioned in the DR spoke about that transformation in their hearts.
Yeah, that's great. The second question that came to my mind is you said that was so attractive to me is you have an exit strategy so that they don't become dependent, they become independent, which is excellent. I was just curious about the dynamics of what a successful exit strategy looked like on the ground level, and the times that perhaps the exit strategy was much more difficult, and how you dealt with that kind of thing.
Yeah, there are benchmarks we would establish for a community of these are things that we want. We want to see them elevate to at least this level in whatever the situation may be. When we go in and we sit down with them, we ask them, what are the critical impoverished needs of the community? And so we begin to define some of those things. It could be they simply need clean access to water, or access to clean water. It could be, well, we don't have any latrines, and so a latrine would be what, growing up West Virginia, it was an outhouse, right? So it's like an outbuilding that is a latrine. And so they don't even have that, and so you can imagine, I mean, for little boys, it's one thing, but for a little girl, they have to go out back around, behind a tree. It's very embarrassing, and it's not good, obviously. So meeting all kinds of needs like that in those communities. But as we have these projects in mind and we see them fulfilled, as we begin to also see their perception of who they are, who God is, begin to rise. That's another benchmark, right? And so we establish these benchmarks before we would exit a community. And we always ask ourselves, are they ready and capable of being self-sustaining after we leave? And after we leave, it doesn't mean we would never go back. If there's a need in the community, we would be back there in a heartbeat to help out if we need to, right? So we're always available for that. But they literally often, as I said, come to us and say, we're ready to do this. So that's not even, See, if they still have that old mindset, it would be, we don't want you to leave. We want to hang on to you. But it's not about us. It's about them from the beginning, empowering them. Yeah. So that's a part of our strategy from the beginning. But it literally takes years to see that manifest itself to where they're ready. And there are things that happen that set that back sometimes. We may target 2026 for a community, but in 2025, there may have been something catastrophic that happened, and so we have to bump that back, and we do. It's not a hard and fast line for us. Anyone else? Yes. You have to sing one song, though, first.
No. My question is are there established churches there? You had mentioned that you're not there to set up churches, but are there times when the people that go to help, are there times of worship and opportunities for teaching about Jesus?
Oh, yeah. Did you two go to a service when you were there? Were you there over a weekend? No, we were not. Okay. We did go into church. Yeah. Okay. So, well, first of all, the worship is lively. I will guarantee you that. You'll be uplifted. You won't recognize some of the songs. Some of them you may, but I hummed along even when I didn't know the song. But I was just blessed. My spirit. It is amazing how the Spirit of God can bless you even though you don't understand what they're saying. You are blessed and lifted by the Spirit of God in that building. So this community has 5 evangelical churches, all right? And I actually don't know if there's a Baptist church in the community. But the funny thing is they come together for the good of the community. The churches do. And sometimes here it's hard to pick your denomination. It's hard to get 2 Baptist churches to work together, or 2 Presbyterian or 2 Methodist or Assembly of God or whatever. It's hard to get them to work together, right? But it's like they need to work together, and they know that. And so, now, granted, I'm sure there's nitpicky issues at times, but you see the body of Christ coming together for good. And what we do is we don't go in to establish a church or to favor one over another, although one church may have a lot of support for the leadership in the community and may be part of the leadership, and they may be parts of the initiatives more than another church only because they've chosen to be, right? But we don't favor one over the other. We're there to lift up the name of Jesus Christ, all right? Not the name of a church individually, but the name of Jesus. And it's a beautiful thing to see it happen. It's almost like a little glimpse of heaven, you know? And so it really is a good thing. But yes, you will have opportunity if you're there over a weekend to be a part of a service and to just be blessed by the Spirit of the Lord, for sure. Yeah. Somebody else?
Okay, I'm a little confused. So Monica and Rhonda went to north, and you're asking us to go to south? Is that what you're saying?
So we're in the same region where we were. It's in the northern part of the country, a region called Kilali, and they divided up into basically neighborhoods. And so we did not visit this particular neighborhood, but we visited one nearby.
Okay, so it's just a neighborhood. It's not like a whole nother city.
No, it's
No.
not. And they've even told us that we would stay in the same hotels where we stayed and eat at the same places. So like we can tell you exactly what it would be like.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 2. What are the requisites for missionaries going with your organization? What are some of the requirements that you have for them?
For missionaries?
Well, people working with your work, whatever you were going to call them.
Okay.
Employees, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We don't have missionaries that we would send from the U.S., number one. As I said, 98 to 9% of the staff, they're going to be from Nicaragua if they're in Nicaragua. And that's the same in every country. But what we do is we raise up people who are faith-based, like-minded in terms of our approach and what we value. And then would be like an employee in a sense. But the ones that work in those communities out there in that region, I know for a fact, many of them on that regional staff, they are young people with college degrees who are very educated, but also committed to the Lord, committed to this work, and believe in the impact that they're making in those communities. I mean, it's not a job for them. It is a ministry. You witnessed it in their hearts.
Should just keep the microphone. Sorry. We got to go to their office one morning. They do a worship time and prayer time every morning before they go out into the communities. And it's an incredible team-based approach that's really focused on, you know, that faith foundation and then going and doing the work. Just an incredible bunch of people.
Yeah.
So you don't have like people from the U.S. coming to help work with you. You have
Church partners. Yeah.
okay.
We don't.
This short term, nothing.
We don't have missionaries from the U.S. that would itinerate, as we used to call it, and raise support and then go down there and work full time.
Oh, okay.
We raise up people in Nicaragua to do that, in Bolivia to do that, and so forth.
Then question 3, how much is it to sponsor a child?
$38 a month. Yeah. Now, some give more than that. You can give 40, 45, but I think 38 is kind of the benchmark entry level of what they say. And a sponsorship doesn't just impact the child. One sponsorship impacts directly at least 8 other people, indirectly probably 3 times that amount, because part of the funds go for the infrastructure of the community. Because if we just support a child or his family, and we don't build up the infrastructure in the community as a whole, then that gain is going to be short-lived. We want to build lasting stability that would extend beyond one generation. And to do that, you have to build up a strong infrastructure in the community, including taking care of community needs like water, sanitation, etc. So to do that, part of those funds then go towards not only the child, but to invest in the community as a whole as well. Because that water project impacts the child. That sanitation project impacts the child and so forth. We have 6 minutes and we have to end hard and fast, right? Oh, one more question, then we'll show the video. And I'll intro it real quick and then show it.
I was just curious if you provide any support or training to the churches that you're partnering or that are partnering with you to help prep them emotionally, spiritually before going and being a part of such a
we do that in a couple of ways. There is a digital book, I think, that you will get a copy of. I probably have I can show you what it looks like. It's called Team Training Manual, which it needs to be updated, but it is good, and it gives some information in there to help prepare you for what you're about to see, right? And how to respond to that, because you do need some prep in that. One of my staff, Juan Pablo, will specifically be working with your church to help you through that process as well, giving some training and offering some suggestions along the way. If you want to be, if you love to read, a couple of good books I would recommend. One is called When Helping Hurts. The other is Toxic Charity. 2 very, very good books that really kind of underscore and explain what I've been talking about. When Helping Hurts was actually co-written by an individual that was that is a former member of Food for the Hungry. He was on staff with us. All right, we're going to see a video. The video is about 2.5 minutes. It will in a short little chunk show you a guy that went on a trip from my home church. We support a community in Guatemala, and it was a team that went down. We sent 3 teams down last year. One was college and youth. And he was one of the college kids that went down. His name is Gage. And he just briefly tells the story, shows the community. You'll get to see a community that's very typical. And they explain a little bit about what we do and what happened to him.
Food for the Hungry is this great organization that helps people all around the world. They're working in all kinds of little communities, such as Chell in Guatemala. And I got to go down there with the student ministries team and just see what they're working on, seeing what they're doing in the community. FH, they're trying to make Chell, this remote village, more self-sustainable. So it's not like we're just like going down there and giving them a bunch of food or whatever. FH has these facilitators, which each facilitator is like specialized in a certain thing. So they got like education, they got nutrition, they got one that works with like the community leaders. So they just go and teach different things. And then those people that they teach the rest of the community. Last year is the first time they were taking people. So I'm like, I kind of wanted to hop onto that opportunity of like, I can be like, start something new. And I had a great time. I like grew a lot and just like kind of fell in love with the community down there. And so when they offered the trip again, I'm like, sign me up. So while we were in Chell, we did a VBS and we just like played games, told stories, just had fun. We also did a couple of home visits. We went to families that like really needed help and they were like, they just wanted prayer. A couple of our team members had a sponsored kid that they met last year. So we went over to them and just to see like their progress and like the joy that they have was like really sweet. There was this one time we were walking back up to the school and this kid yells at me from across the river. He's like, Gage, Gage. He was like waving all over the place. And it was a kid I met last year. It was like, it's cool that he like remembered us. It's like what we stood for. It's like the hope that we have in Jesus, like we were able to give that to them. The people down there that we met, like the FH staff and like just community members, they connected with us so easily. Like they didn't even think there was a language barrier. Like there totally is, and it's like it doesn't matter. It's super, super cool to like just connect with them, and they're also children of God, thousands of miles away. The entire trip experience got me out of my comfort zone. And it gave me more confidence in Jesus because like, he's all we need. Knowing that and like really internalizing that was like kind of what I learned. It was like,
So that, in a nutshell, is all the time we have, by the way. I would just say this. I know Gage personally. He's son of the worship leader, by the way. So, yeah, one plug for you. So, yeah, he's a great guy, but it impacts your life. You can't fully be totally ready for it. You got to, following God takes a blend of faith and wisdom. And wisdom you need, faith you need. And as you blend those two things together as you walk through life, powerful things can happen in you and through you. And I encourage you to just continue to seek God with all your being and pursue his faith and wisdom that he gives you. If you have any further questions, I was going to say, send them to Rod or I don't know how you want him to go, or the pastor, and they'll filter them on to me and my team. We want you to feel comfortable. We would never send a team down if we felt there was a reason to be, it was unsafe, whether because of weather or because of mankind and any issues going on. The country is safe. We have teams down there now in the North community that you got to visit. Coastal Community Church in Virginia Beach is the sponsor church of that community. So you have some of your brothers and sisters right there in the area. And that's all the time we have. It's been a pleasure. Always feel free. And they have my email address. You want to send me questions, you could send me questions, or I can give you my card if you need it.
How do we sponsor a child?
Sponsoring a child, we want to make sure that, and I don't know that we've even talked about that yet, but what we can do it one of two ways: either provide actual hard copy packets. The other option I would suggest is we can create a landing page for a website that would only have children from your community who are available on it, and then you could just go on and pick and choose right there online, and that's the easiest way.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will definitely talk about that a little bit more, because that's one of the ways that we can take care of the financial part of this partnership. But as you saw in the video, I mean, that was a video of high school and college students making a trip. As part of our partnership, we would be committing to go there at least one time a year, but possibly even 2 or 3 times. And that could be a high school and college group that goes and just does VBS, that kind of thing, with children and young people in the community. That could be an adult group going to help with some of their entrepreneurial livelihood type things, like the barbershop, or helping them build a fence, or building a latrine, or things like that. So there are all kinds of different options as far as what those trips might look like going forward. There is the financial piece to this. Is it's a commitment, an annual commitment of $12,500 on the part of the church, and so that was included in this year's budget. But if we do child sponsorships at $38 a month, and like he said, you can pick your child that you want to sponsor in that community, or 2 children, or whatever. That piece, if you multiply it out, 38 times 12 is $456 a year that goes toward our church commitment. So if we just find 27 or 28 families within the church who are willing to sponsor a child, then that's going to take care of that commitment. And then the $12,500 we have in the budget can be used toward travel expenses for the people who go on the trips. Does that make sense? So that's how we would sort of approach the...
I would also add that sometimes the churches even use that to help fund a special project in the community.
Exactly, or to fund a project in the community. Yep. All right.
Is there a price tag on the items that are remaining, the projects that are remaining?
I don't think we've gotten that specific yet at this point. But this is something that will be discussed and hopefully affirmed, voted on in our next quarterly business meeting next month in May. So be praying about this. Please ask missions committee members or Pastor Chris any questions that you may have. And if we can't answer them, then we'll go to Michael and Juan Pablo and others who can answer those for us. Does that make sense? Thank you, Michael, so much for being here with us today. I know you've got a long trip back to Ohio, so again, thank you very much. All right, let's close in prayer so we can get the bus on the road. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you again for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to worship you. Thank you for the opportunity to learn about your work in other parts of the world. And God, I just pray that you would give us as a church your wisdom and discernment in proceeding with this effort in Nicaragua. And God, I pray that if we do, that this would be a meaningful thing, very meaningful for both us and for the people there. Give us a good day now, and we pray this in Christ's name. Amen.